You just lost at your own game. You're outgunned and outmanned. Did that go the way you thought it was going to go? Nope.
Hansel, so hot right now.
Like, if Charlie still wants to play Daredevil, like, treat him like Hugh Jackman. Do it as long as he's willing to do it.
Right, exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
Hugh eventually was just like, man, I can't eat 5,000 calories and work out 5 hours a day anymore. Like, I'm tired. And it was like, okay, dude, you've been doing it for 15 years. But like, Charlie's 37. He's fine. He got time.
I didn't know he was even that old. Wow. Okay. Cool. Hi, everybody. This is Swanka Burnett with the QC.
And this is Jared, the QC contributor.
Welcome to episode 5 of Quality Control. Today we're going to be discussing the news with Spider-Man and the apparent, all the Spider-Man characters from previous movies are coming back. So Tobey Maguire is in talks, but not confirmed. Andrew Garfield confirmed. Tom Holland, of course, the star of the movie. Jamie Foxx coming back as Electro. Alfred Molina coming back as Dr. Octopus. Emma Stone coming back, even though she died, as Gwen Stacy. Kirsten Dunst, and then I guess the biggest news, which is just came out in the past couple hours before we started recording this, is Charlie Cox might be reprising his role as Daredevil from the TV show in the MCU movies, which would be a really interesting development. So, just wanted to get what's your initial reaction to that news, Jared?
All that news. So much news. So, I'm a huge Daredevil fan, Charlie Cox fanboy. I remember when Daredevil was announced that it was dying, and we seemed like, okay, well, because Disney Plus was coming, so all the stuff was leaving Netflix. Like, I almost shed a tear. Daredevil season 3 was amazing, so I'm very hype about that news to see Charlie Cox come back. Emma Stone makes me think, well, she's dead, but if it's multiverse, are we going to do live action Spider-Gwen? Because we know how successful that was in the end of the Spider-Verse movie. Are we going Sinister Six? Because at the end of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man run, Paul Giamatti was Rhino, right? And that's the last sequence. And so they were very much, clearly Sony was trying to do Sinister Six. So maybe, are we bringing back Toby and everybody, bringing back Doc Ock, bringing back Elektra? Are we doing some version of the Sinister Six? Like, there's so many ways in which that can go. But I'm just very excited to see this very comic-like, clash. Maybe not clash, they're not fighting each other, but to get all of them in the mix together is very much like why we loved comic books in the beginning. Like, this is now the Marvel movies now doing what the comics have been able to do for decades.
Sure. So. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, as a comic book fan and someone, who's grew up reading these things, like, what a time to be alive. I mean, I loved, even though the Clone Saga got a lot of hate throughout the years for how it just kept going and really ended up being kind of nonsensical. I actually really enjoyed that storyline and adding in all the Ben Reilly Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider. Like, I actually really enjoyed reading those books, and this is kind of going in that direction. The notion that we're going to have 3 Spider-Mans on camera at the same time in costume, like, they got to find a way to make them fight for one thing. So,
they better.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, I really hope Tobey Maguire signs on. He hasn't signed on yet. You would think he would, just because I don't know what he's doing right now. I don't think he's been.
I'm sure they're paying him a lot.
Doing a whole lot, so I would think he'd be available for it. But no, I think it's pretty exciting. Which storyline do you think they'll do? I mean, you mentioned Sinister Six. Do you think maybe just an extension of an extension of the Spider-Verse animated movie, new story, Clone Saga? What do you think?
I don't think it's going to be an extension of the Spider-Verse, because we know Into the Spider-Verse 2 is in production. I think that's slated for a 2022 release. So I do think they're going to try and keep those separate. However, due to its massive success, I think tokens and small pieces will be taken from Spider-Verse, but I think they're going to have like a completely separate storyline with Miguel O'Hara 2099, which was teased at the end of Spider-Verse. So I think that's going to stay separate. My mind goes to either Sinister Six, which has never truly been done, so it would still be new for us. Or I also think if you're putting Daredevil in there, my mind also went towards Civil War, but that's already been done. But, in comic books, Civil War, that would make sense for, like, Spider-Man to need, like, legal representation. But we've already done an MCU Civil War, but maybe they'll take a piece from that arc from the comics they didn't use, because they didn't use plenty of it. So those are kind of the 2 places in my mind go, but I think Sinister Six is the most likely.
Right. And you mentioned Spider-Gwen and you mentioned Spider-Man 2099. Do you think the characters that have already been introduced in the animated movie, do you think that we're going to get live action, or do you think they're not going to create any overlap in that way?
I would like to see a live action Spider-Gwen if Emma Stone was willing to do it. This makes me think of Natalie Portman accepting a role to play female Thor in Love and Thunder.
Right.
And so we're kind of transforming Jane Foster. So there is a little bit of a precedent for it, turning a non-superhero character into a superhero character. But we also have Haley Steinfeld voicing it as Spider-Gwen in the animated. So like that's a new wrinkle that we didn't have with Thor. So my mind is really racing trying to connect all these dots.
Right.
It's a coin flip. I could see Emma maybe just putting on the outfit at the end as like a teaser or something, and maybe not doing like full Spider-Gwen heroics and acrobatics.
Gotcha. So you don't think it's going to be anything clone related? I don't think they're going to introduce the whole idea of clones.
I think that's too much.
Yeah.
In one movie, I think they have so like I'm already so excited based on what they've already announced. I don't think you need to throw Ben Reilly in there too and do Scarlet Spider or Kane or like these other characters. Like I would think Kevin Feige now running Marvel in its entirety, movies, comics, everything. They have so much to plan for long term to try to keep this superhero dynasty going for decades. Like, they don't need to overreach, in my opinion, and put something like Scarlet Spider in this movie. We're all hyped just to see all three Spider-Men at the same time. Like, so done. I'm going.
Gotcha. And they got time. I have a feeling that the Clone Saga is something that, maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, after they've already kind of ran the course with Spider-Verse, they can say, oh, now Peter Parker has a clone, and all of a sudden they've got a whole new storyline to go down. So that's exactly interesting. So we do know that from, I believe it was Venom, like the little teaser after the movie, we know that they introduced Vulture basically in the Venom series. So we know that Venom and Carnage exist in the Spider-Man universe, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, are they going to introduce the symbiotes in Spider-Man 3? Are they going to wait? Maybe even in Doctor Strange? Because we know Spider-Man, Tom Holland is going to appear in Doctor Strange. So I guess the question is, when's a good time for them to introduce symbiotes, and when do you think it'll happen?
I mean, to me, that's another way you could go, because I'm trying to think of a threat big enough that we need 3 Spider-Men, right? So Sinister Six would make sense because it's 6 villains, 2 per Spider-Man. But I would love like an Ultimate Carnage like arc as well, because Carnage and Cletus Cassidy, like fun character, vicious, like. You think like if you think Venom's bad and you don't know who Carnage, like read up on the Wikipedia article on Carnage. Like he's vicious, and it's something where historically Spider-Man has enlisted help from Daredevil, from other heroes to take down Carnage. So I think he would be a big enough threat. I mean, to get that extra help, because Carnage just likes to kill people, like his name intends. So right. I'd love either one. Like if I went in thinking Sinister Six and I saw that it was Carnage instead, I would still be happy.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'm interested to see what they do with Carnage as well, just because I feel like as a character in the comics, he's visually interesting and, he's a good foil for Spider-Man and Venom, but I always found him a little bit one note in that he just kind of wants to kill and maim and he doesn't really have much of a backstory. So I'm curious what they do both in the Venom sequel to introduce Carnage and then also, what they would do to kind of make him more of a well-rounded character for a full movie, as opposed to just like I'm Carnage and I want to kill people. You know what I mean? So we'll see. I think that'll be interesting to see what they do with that. So let's talk just a little bit about DC Flashpoint. So we know Flashpoint is also a multiverse type story where they're trying to introduce characters that exist, same characters that exist simultaneously in different timelines, right? Does it make sense for DC to even do that if Marvel already beats them to the punch with this Spider-Verse thing and the multiverse?
I think Marvel's already beaten her to the punch. I think Into the Spider-Verse, because of how successful it was, kind of beat them to it. It's not that DC hasn't done a good Flashpoint. The Flashpoint Paradox movie, which came out well before Into the Spider-Verse did, I thought was great.
That's great. It's my favorite DC animated film, actually. It's
excellent. So Flashpoint Paradox, very well done when they animated it. And in my opinion, DC animated stuff is typically better than the live action stuff. But I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that DC has to just like burn all their plans if they were planning on doing Flashpoint. Like they're completely different heroes. So I would go see a Sinister Six Spider-Verse movie, and I would go see a Flashpoint movie using different New 52, Wally West, Jake Garrick, Barry Allen, all the same. Like I'd still see it. Flash isn't the same as Spider-Man, so I'm still gonna want to see it. So hopefully if they were planning on doing it, please don't kill it. I'll watch both. I promise. You can get my $12.
Right. Yeah. No. I'm curious if now they're talking about bringing in Daredevil. I wonder if we're gonna maybe see Jessica Jones, the same Jessica Jones character on screen, Luke Cage. If they're gonna kind of just like ignore that stuff, or will we see Iron Fist now in the MCU? Is that something that's coming too? It's curious to see what they do.
Okay. Daredevil was the OG, and in my opinion, the best. So if they want to add the other MCU people, they can. But Daredevil, to me, also classic pairing with Spider-Man. I think there's way more source material for Daredevil Spider-Man adventures than Spider-Man Jessica Jones or Spider-Man Iron Fist. Like, they didn't interact as much in the comics either.
Gotcha. Cool. Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks, Jared. Appreciate having a conversation with you about the Spider-Man's this upcoming, foray they're making with the Spider-Man. Looks to be really interesting, bringing in all these characters from previous movies. So we'll see what they do. So that wraps up episode 5 of Quality Control. Thanks for listening. Keep it locked to the QC for all your entertainment review needs. See you at the next one. Peace.